So the first thing just going to look at then is what happens in this NodeRed for it. It's really aimed at helping you quickly knock together applications. Once you've done your first one, you've done this bit about using fidgets to pick up the data and write into a database or send out over MQTT, you'll find that those techniques are going to be very similar for other apps that you write. Much like any sort of thing that you're learning, the first time you do it, it's quite difficult, and then the second time it gets sort of easier and you start to use sort of common techniques. Well, this is a sort of common infrastructure that you've got. You've got these devices in the field, if you like. They're the actual sensors that you're dealing with. Your sliders, your temperature sensors, your RFID units, connected through gateways to get to the outside world. So they are things like the home router for it, or your mobile phone, the things that it's bouncing through, the sorts of things that you're doing in your assignments with that sort of systems diagram of showing where the sort of data's flowing through. That IoT gateway then gets bounced out to some wider network like the internet, so you're using internet-based protocols then, and then possibly out to that sort of cloud provider data center in the background, and maybe having some sort of background applications and analytics to analyse that sort of data going on with it. In most applications, this bottom side for IoT is a predominant side that you're working on. That's really the side that we've been working on for the assignment. I have put up a bit on Moodle if anybody who wants perhaps to connect it to the cloud instead, rather than storing it in MySQL, how you might store it in a cloud-based data store. There's a little demo one up there if you want to sort of try that out. Again, particularly if you want to try it with say, a different sort of project for it. So, we're working with a few sort of protocols. We've got all these sort of sensors that are typically distributing messages between them all, and we've seen that one way of doing it is to write it to a database, store it in the database, and then somebody who wants it has to put in a request for what is that data. So you might store, say, what you want the lock position to be, you want it open, so you write to the database motor and give it the value open, but then the actual lock has got to request from the database what that value is, and it's sort of polling it. So we have this and that's not really the best solution to have this repeated polling. The demo that I gave you did turn a motor according to what was in the database, but it only did it once. You ran the program, it turned the motor, and then stopped the program. That's not a particularly good locking system if it only works just for the one time, the very first time. So you'd have to have it polling the server and keep asking the server over and over again. And even though you might only use the door lock twice a day, it's going to be polling the server every second, say, in order to give a fast response when you actually are there, and a bit wasteful of that bandwidth. So we introduced this idea of an MQTT client to us to broadcast out messages, so whenever a sensor changed, or an actuator changed, whenever something changes, to broadcast out that messages to anybody who's interested. So all these sensors, all these actuators could register as being interested in a particular sensor and automatically receive this message through a publish subscribe model to sort of get there. And then in the sort of background, you might be, if you wanted to, you'd have this sort of MQTT server driving it, but they could push some of those sort of things in a way in the database if you liked. There's various solutions to using these publish subscribes on. We've just gone through MQTT. IBM have got something called Bluemix to help set an IoT back-end up. You can do similar ones with Amazon. They supply these back-ends for it. Google also supply a similar approach to it. But in terms of using NodeRed, what you're often trying to do, and it is quite difficult in the labs that you've got, you're trying to use lots of different APIs. You've had to learn how to talk to the fidgets themselves. So you've got some little fidget demo programs that say, I want to use an RFID, or I want to use this voltage ratio change sensor or want to use a servo to it. And you've got perhaps sort of 20 or 30 methods for each one. You then also got to talk to a server. So you have to learn a bit about Apache, about the Tomcat server and how to use servlets. You then have to put that away into, say, a database. So you have to know a bit of MySQL to do it. And then there's all this Java in between it, linking to it. So it often requires you to learn a whole range of different device APIs and online services if you want to push it away, perhaps sort of send some particular sensor values an email or tweet it out. You've got to learn that API of how to do it. If you want to put it up on Facebook, you've got to learn the Facebook API to do it. Basically, all these things that are done programmatically. And you've got a lot of time figuring out how to access these sorts of things or how to get authorization to use particular aspects of it. Not spent on actually doing the real application that you're trying to do. And so every new thing has got another API to learn. It's just yet another little programming interface you've got to learn how to sort of use so that you can either you've developed it and you can offer it to other people, or somebody else has developed this API and you're starting to use it. So where this NodeRed comes in is just a tool to make it easier for developers at different levels to bring together all these different types of API in a sort of common interface to sort of using them. Whether it's physical devices or sort of digital devices for it. So that's where NodeRed's coming in with the idea of providing you with access to the APIs down that left-hand side through a series of what they refer to as nodes. And typically these nodes have got something that's feeding into it. It'll do some processing, and then there'll be something feeding out of it to sort of work on. And there's some basic nodes to work with, the equivalent of a print line, if you like, the equivalent of an if statement or a repeat statement. There's the basic glue that holds together ones, but then there's some more complex ones like MQTT nodes. In terms of setting this sort of thing up, you can set it up through, you can install Node.js on your machine. Not that having a problem. That's great for the market. That's better. Oh, there's another nice place that we're going to use this week. Sense Technic. Just give you a live demo. This site called Sense Technic, and the link's in the Moodle page to it. They do an online version of NodeRed, accessible through a browser. You've got a free interface to it, which limits you to 50 nodes for it, and then other ones that are priced according to how much you're sort of using, like many of these sorts of things. If I just quickly log in to my own one. This will give you an online version of using it with the same sort of interface. If you want to install it on your own machine, you can. You've just got to install Node.js first and then install the NodeRed interface to it. Now there's a guide to doing that online as well if you want to set it up on your own machine, or you can just go to this Sense Technic site and just sign up just for a free session on it. Well, it's as free as long as you like, as long as you're not using above certain sort of limits to it. So you end up, let's shift that sideboard out of the way. You end up with sort of this, effectively like a flow diagram of how things are working. There's that one there, sort of quite complicated, a bit sort of less one for it. Things like a switch there, depending on what the value is. There's a JSON parser to put in. There's a nice one here that would tweet the Manchester weather. It links into a weather service. There's a web service that just tells you the weather for any location in the world, and a little function node that decided if it's cloudy weather, then tweet that out according on my sort of Twitter feed to it, and send an email. So if I think it's sort of, it might even have deployed by now. These are the messages going through. It's the live. But I think one of the flows is actually following MUFC. Therefore, it's one of these. It's one that's monitoring the Manchester United Twitter feed. So these are some of the live feeds coming out there, just being displayed from. We'll find the flow that did it. That's flowing out from this tweets about sports teams, and it's putting it out into a display and then tweeting it out. So that particular node, when you select it, yeah, I've put my my Twitter ID in there, and it's just searching for any mention of MUFC or Canucks as well. I think I kept the guy's original one in that he sent me to.